So today on the table we're discussing State Question 788 and specifically what it means for the tribe. And we've covered it now, to some extent. We've got different perspectives, specifically from the nation. But we definitely wanted to have somebody on the table with us that could speak to code, different things like that, changing of laws. And that's why we brought in the Honorable Patrick Moore. He was the longest tenured district judge during his time here at Muscogee Creek Nation, sitting on the bench. Judge, thanks for being with us today.
You're welcome.
Well, State Question 788, specifically what it means for Creek Nation. I was able to sit down with Chief Floyd. I think you can still see the interview on YouTube. We've got a lot of people that have seen it. A lot of people, talking about it. It's 10 minutes. It's just basically raw footage of Chief Floyd talking about this issue, what it means for the tribe. Basically, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a short watch, but to summarize his thoughts, it's kind of a wait and see, especially kind of with the Murphy case. It's kind of similar. It's kind of a wait and see. We're going to have to wait till things are put forth. At the beginning of the interview, he mentioned, well, we need to see what Mary Fallin and her administration does as far as the special session. Right after that, she comes out and says, there will be no special session. We're going to leave it as is from this Department of Health, and the board will look over what's there now, and they will vote on that. So we got that a little bit, and then we had the Fallon news come out. He also said, we've seen other tribes do it around the country, and it's certainly been profitable. So from his comments, it was, it would be wise at least to look into it to some point. But then I talked with Light Horse Police Chief Robert Hawkins, and he said, for us, it's the same old thing. We have to deal with federal provisions. So in that respect, if you are cultivating and growing or using in possession of anything like that in Indian land, you will be arrested. You will be prosecuted just like you are now. And it will go from there. So that was from Chief Hawkins. And then I also talked with Lucian Tiger, the Speaker of the National Council, because Chief had mentioned in his comments, I don't know what the council is going to do. Maybe there will be some legislation. I don't know. I haven't had that conversation. So I reached out to Lucian Tiger, the Speaker of the National Council, with an email. I simply asked him, is there any planned legislation right now from Creek Nation or anything that's being talked about to get in line with State Question 788 being passed? Meaning, are we going to change code to get in line and in compliance with what's happened in the state? And he said, not at this time. So there's that, and that's kind of his position.
I have one more to add to that,
Sure.
actually. So we went to the Health, Education, and Welfare Committee meeting at National Council, and at those committee meetings now, Secretary of Health Sean Terry is giving monthly reports on the health department, and one of the things he brought up was State Question 788, since it deals with, medicinal marijuana.
Sure.
And they received notification from IHS that because we receive federal funding for our health services, that if we were to implement that in the clinics, we would be jeopardizing our federal funding when it comes to that. Now, of course, that opens the door to a whole bunch of additional questions, the difference between the clinics and the hospital or anything as far as prescribing it on the medical end, and we don't have answers to all of that just yet.
Yeah. And Judge, to bring you in, when you talk about maybe having to change code, change law at Muscogee Creek Nation, what goes into that?
Well, as I'm understanding what you're talking about here, Sean Terry's right. And he's right even further than he brought forth with you. All of his doctors have a DEA license.
What does that mean?
They have a license from the federal government to dispense drugs and narcotics and prescriptions. If they violate the law, they lose their license. Simple as that.
Right. And they'd be
There's
violating.
even a more basic situation with all of this. It's against federal law.
Right.
788 is against federal law.
And
Now, how do you pass something at the state level or the tribal level overpowering the federal government?
I think that's the biggest sticking situation.
Every person that took oath of office, state of Oklahoma, district attorneys, everybody entering the armed services of the United States, everybody that's a city councilman, they've taken an oath to uphold the United States Constitution and its laws. So how do they even pass something that's against federal law?
You said other tribes have already kind of started
Yeah.
going into this.
They're in the same boat, aren't they?
So how did they get around it?
They haven't gotten around it yet because the cases haven't gone into federal court yet, have they?
So
There's
it's just-
there's some too that are on like reservations. How does that?
Federal law applies to reservations, does it not?
Yep. I mean, I think that
That's the basic.
that's
I
got to
took
be the
an oath
biggest.
in the military. I took an oath as a lawyer in Oklahoma to uphold the United States Constitution and its laws. How can I do anything but say it's not right what they've done with 788?
Is there any type of precedent where we've seen, because this was a state question, so this was passed by the people, and this didn't come out of like the Oklahoma Senate or anything like that. Is there any kind of precedent for this? Not with marijuana or drugs, but with
If the people
something
want
else.
to do something about it, they need to amend the federal laws, not make new ones for the state.
So
The
just from a
state of
legal
Oklahoma
standpoint, this
in
is
the
illegal.
Enabling
I mean,
Act
it's
said we're going to follow
Federally.
federal law.
for federal.
Mhm.
They also said they weren't going to bother the Indians in their land. And they didn't tell the truth about that, did they?
Well, they haven't told the truth about a lot of things. But
And this is just another instance where somebody's not telling the truth.
well, and I think too, you come out of it with, how much is it going to be regulated? There's only
Well,
a
you
certain
can't
amount of
even get
states
to the
look at.
regulation because it's against the law.
Right.
So
But
they're wasting time, are they not?
how have they been able to get past that in states where it's
It
been
was just
implemented?
done illegally.
So they're breaking the law in Colorado.
Yes.
Okay.
No doubt in my mind about that. They have to change federal law.
And that, so when we're talking about whether it's legal or not on the state level, of course, Colorado has recreational marijuana, and because it's still illegal under federal law, the DEA and any type of federal agency can come in and arrest people
If they wanted to.
Okay.
Do they
That's
want
why
to?
there's problems with banking
Right.
and interstate commerce.
Mhm.
Those are federal laws, are they not?
No, they are. But do they? Are they enforcing with a heavy hand?
I
Is what
don't
I'm
think
asking.
so.
I don't
okay.
think so. I remember hearing that whenever California started toying around with this whole idea. And
Right.
Like,
So
Well, we've even
we're-
seen it.
California said though they're not going to enforce it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
illegal. It's under federal law. It's
Well,
going to be
that's
illegal.
another thing. It's just like I'm the district attorney. I'm supposed to enforce all the laws, but have the discretion to overlook them if I want to, because that's my power.
And I think that's how some of the states are
It's
kind of viewing
happening
it.
that
Yeah.
way everywhere. But still, the right thing to do is change the law.
So
You see?
we're talking about, you were talking about what the administration sees as far as like the federal level and enforcement and whatnot. And recently, Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Cory Gardner introduced what they're calling the States Act. It's Senate Bill 3032. And what they say and kind of the background information on this is previously the Department of Justice issued guidance to support the states in what they wanted to do for marijuana and whatnot. And that guidance was withdrawn in 2018. And I think you've seen that with this current administration and under Attorney General Jeff Sessions. And so what this States Act does or aims to do is it doesn't legalize it. It doesn't legalize medical marijuana or recreational marijuana, but it gives states the power to decide what they're going to do, whether they want to make it illegal altogether, whether they want medicinal marijuana, whether they want recreational marijuana, and it's up to each state. But what it does do, Judge Moore brought up the financing and being able to put money in banks and whatnot because it's considered, money laundering, drug trafficking and whatnot.
Those are federal laws.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
There are state banks, so
Right,
See?
and I would guess, I don't know, but I would guess that's what some of these facilities are using as state banks. But what this would do is it says as long as someone is within the laws of the state, whatever the state law is, the federal law doesn't apply. Now it does state, and where is this at? It doesn't repeal like that it should be a controlled substance, and it also states that you can't have anyone under the age of 18 employed in the medical marijuana or marijuana industry, and it also says that no one under the age of 21 can use it other than for medicinal purposes. But it seeks to put that on the state's level and address some of those financial issues and transportation issues on the federal level.
And I think that's something that I had seen too in the arguments on, like right now, we have two sides, the cannabis industry and the backers of that pushing in Oklahoma, and then the other side, against it. And that other side against it is really adamant in, we all know, the classification of drugs. At the federal level too is type 1 narcotic and things like that. There's a lot of things that marijuana has been looped in with that are pretty serious drugs. Yeah. So, but the other side of it is wanting to maintain that and say this isn't a medicine. This is bad for you, and it is a drug. So there's kind of that infighting going on with it too, and it kind of relates to what you said as far as. There's people, still classifying this in certain ways, and there's another side of this that's saying this can be medicinally beneficial.
I forgot to mention too. So not only does it grant these powers to states, but it also grants those protections to Washington D.C., to U.S. territories, and to federally recognized tribes as well.
But critical to what you're saying, Jessica, is the fact that this isn't a law yet.
Correct. It's still in fact it's just been brought up in committee.
And then when it's passed, then they have to deal with what happens in the aftermath.
Right.
But right now, it's against the law.
Exactly.
Plain and simple.
It looks vastly different than what it probably will at the end. When it gets through all of
if they can even get it through, they can't agree on anything.
Let me ask you this: federally, if something was changed, what's the process there?
Do what now?
Federally. I mean, if something's changed, we've
Repeal
even seen
the law that they passed back in the 20s.
Okay, and but explain kind of what that would take.
Well, a repeal. If they had one session of Congress,
they could just
and
take
repeal laws, and the next one they introduced them, our textbook, our library wouldn't be as big as this room. It'd be down to a few volumes.
Sure.
They should do the same thing in Oklahoma. And what Will Rogers said, the only time we're really in danger is when the Congress is in session.
I could probably, I agree with that a bit.
But anyway, that's what they need to do, but they don't, none of them have the wherewithal to do something like that.
Now, as far as, I know you've got your code book here.
Well, I brought this because the Creek Nation has a schedule of drugs, which is basically the same as the feds. And so the Light Horse Chief is correct in what he's saying here. Mm-hmm. And he's a policeman. He's taken an oath to uphold this Constitution and laws, right?
Right.
So he has to enforce them. Now, you want the big ghost out there that nobody's thinking about?
Hit it.
Murphy.
Yes.
If Creek Nation is enforcing their laws and Murphy's upheld, there's 11 counties in Oklahoma, marijuana's going to be against the law again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what the state legislature does or the state people do.
Unless there's action on the federal level that makes it legal.
This statute says it's illegal.
Correct.
This will apply in the Creek Nation just like it would if it's in the state of Texas or the state of any state. The feds can pass this law all they want, but states still have laws also. The correct thing to do, change the law at the federal level, change the law at the Creek Nation level, change the law at the state level. Then everyone's on the same sheet of music.
Wasn't there talk from I don't know if it was just smoke or whatever, but pun. But wasn't there talk from the Trump administration about the desire maybe to switch federal law on this issue?
I think that would not be something CNN would like.
Well,
am I correct?
Well, I'm not in the business of picking and choosing networks.
They don't want to give Trump credit for anything.
I just trust Mvskoke Media. That's
but remember, you're in Oklahoma, and 89% of the people support Trump.
They do. But I wonder, what it's going to what the end game is going to be as far as like federally changing things, or what his
Be up
stance
to
would
the
be on it.
feds.
That's what I mean. I'd like to see more.
There's a
on
lot
that.
of things they should do
Mhm.
that they don't want to do.
And the change on the federal level, just to clarify for anyone watching this, it doesn't. It's got to be through Congress. It's got to be through the Senate and the
Correct.
House to change the law. It can't just be, someone, Jeff Sessions or Donald Trump, to come in and say marijuana is legal.
Yeah. Right.
Actually, I don't think the Attorney General can say it's illegal. The Attorney General's going to have to say we're not enforcing that rule or regulation, because he doesn't have the authority to change the
Right.
statutes of the United States.
Right.
The President doesn't have that authority. Takes the House and the Congress, and then the President has to sign it.
I don't think this Attorney General is going to say we're not going to
Well,
prosecute
I think
that.
he's. Well, I mean, he came
Just
out
like I don't
before.
think Mr. Kavanaugh is going to be too keen on wanting the Creek Nation to have their reservation back.
Well, I mean, we
Possible.
don't
Or you
we
think
don't
it's a
know that.
6-3 now? huh?
Who knows? Who knows? I mean, he may not. We just don't know.
I'm just saying, if that happens,
Mhm.
then the light horse chief's right.
There you go. If that happens, though,
But it's also right
you've got
about
material for 2 or 3 years.
Oh, you
here
got
to
more than that, a lifetime.
Yeah.
But it's also possible in all the 5 tribes.
Mhm.
Because whatever happens to Creek Nation happens to all the 5 civilized tribes. And it might even go all the way to the border of Texas. Because the original deed to the Creek Nation went all the way to what was Mexico back in 1854. Norman, Oklahoma was in the Creek Nation. Oklahoma City was in the Creek Nation. Matter
Maybe
of
a
fact,
lot
I
of
think
area.
almost all the state would have been in one of the 5 tribes.
Aren't you glad you're not on the bench anymore and have to worry
I don't have
about
to make
all of those cases that you'd
I
have to
don't
look over?
worry about any of them.
That's a lot of area to cover. A lot of people out
What
there.
have you learned in
You know
some
what?
of your research?
Yeah, just this. I made it through half of this stack, and like they have. I know the Creek Nation was mentioned in here specifically with 2 other tribes as being some of the IDs issued out from tribes that the dispensaries will accept. It kind of looks like, I kind of look at it like the immigration problem and how they're, some counties along the border choose not to enforce it. I mean, that's kind of what this marijuana thing's turning into, I mean, it's a battle between the states and the federal government. I mean, what are we going to support? We know this is illegal, but do we agree with it? And kind of like I said, like some counties in California, Texas, Arizona, the border states that their law enforcement just aren't enforcing the immigration thing. That's going to be like that all over Oklahoma. I mean, which counties? I mean, you're going to get some police officers that, like Judge Moore said, that are in support of and aren't in support of. So.
Right.
Well, but policemen have another problem. The federal government's already notified them that if you carry a pistol or buy ammunition, you can't have one of these licenses.
Yeah.
That hasn't been retracted to my knowledge,
No.
is that correct?
No, and that's been one of the biggest things that's come out.
Yeah, I
of this.
think that's
Well,
probably one of the more.
Well, and who knows what else is floating around out there.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to keep an eye on this, and I want to thank all of you for being with us on the table, talking about this, very complex issue as we've covered here. There's a lot of what ifs and things like that, but I think the main thing we're establishing is that the federal regulations, guidelines, laws say one thing. The state of Oklahoma is now, the people anyway, are saying another. How is that going to be resolved? And we'll have to keep an eye on it here, as we do with everything else at Mvskoke Media here. And this has been The Table. Thank you, Judge, for joining us. And you two, get back to work.